gives a good opportunity to say it.
Oh yes. Happy Women's Day to our mothers, sisters out there. I know I didn't join the celebrations today, but at least my colleagues are there. And
well, we invited you, so you couldn't do two things at the same time.
Yes, but I wish them all the best.
Thank you. Indeed, happy Women's Day. In the studio, we have a young journalist, Derek Wanda. You're most welcome to the Capital Gang once again.
Thank you, Oscar. It's always a pleasure being here. And happy Women's Day to the women in this studio and all the women out there.
Then also the veteran journalist, Angelo Izama. You're most welcome to the Capital Gang.
Thank you, Oscar. Thanks for having me.
I've had apologies, Martin, from police. I had SCP Kituma Rusoke, who called me about 5 minutes ago, that he's very unwell, so he couldn't make it to gang because he was going to be in the hot seat about Kawempe, police and state brutality. Now that he has cancelled, I guess you are the one who's going to be in the hot seat because you are government here.
Yes, we'll discuss the no brutality.
You said you will discuss the noob tactics.
Noob
brutality. Yes. Okay. Well, I had state brutality in mind, not noob brutality. But before we dig into all that, I want us to talk about electricity, and I have some people from electricity. Jonan Kiza, head of corporate and stakeholder affairs, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. You're most welcome to the Capital Gang. Jonan.
Thank you very much, Oscar, and a belated birthday to you. Greetings to all our listeners on the Capital Gang. Jonan Kiza, UEDCL, and I'm so honored to be here.
Thank you.
Usually it is interesting to be the other side of the radio, not to be inside, especially when you meet the seasoned Oscar somewhere, but we shall really face off and we see what to cascade out.
I must tell you, Jonan, people on Entebbe Road don't like you very much because for the last 3 days, Entebbe Road is miserable.
We shall
even as I speak, so it is. I must give a shout out for them.
We shall give a perspective to the darkness there.
Even us in Chigo, we are not happy. So actually in Chigo, we are not happy with electricity and water people. So it's and Entebbe Road as well. So it's a real problem.
I think the listeners can imagine the hostility I am in. I have annoyed customers in here and annoyed customers on Entebbe Road and Chigo, but we shall discuss.
And I should tell the listeners that we are just starting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Dr. Patricia Kevin Litho, Assistant Commissioner, Communication and Information Management, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. You are welcome to the Capital Gang once again.
Thank you, Oscar. Exciting to be in your presence and really happy to share what the ministry is doing to make things better. You've already registered the trouble we are in. Hope we can offer some comforting explanation. Happy Women's Day to all women in Uganda.
Indeed, happy Women's Day. So, Jonan, beginning with you, if we've had 3 days of darkness, 3 days of no power, how ready is UEDCL to take up the mantle?
Thank you very much, Oscar. Maybe to get the very first points home, the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited is the owner of all the 33 kilovolts and below electricity assets, and of which some of those were leased to Umeme Limited for a period of 20 years, which period came to a natural closure on 28th of February, this very past month, 2025. And we are in a transition. This remaining 1 month, we're in a transition from Umeme to UEDCL. It is a bit early to say that the people in Chigo are experiencing a blackout, and therefore I should be able to give an explanation deeply, because the license holder is still around. Umeme's license terminates on 31st at midnight 00 hours. So we expect them to continue, and I am sure they are continuing with their mandate to serve Ugandans until we officially take over. But also, it is also a bit hard, especially in this period, Oscar. There are so many other transition activities that are taking place on the side of government. We are prepared, extremely prepared, to ensure that on 1st of April, there is no difference in the service delivery that we've been having.
No. You should be saying that there will be a big difference. It will be better, it will be superb.
It will be better, it will be superb, it will be excellent, it will be very interesting.
No difference, like today, darkness for 3 days. Then
Where I am seated under this roof, when I say there will be no difference unless I had the generator running, but I'm sure there is power on here at the Capital House. But we are really prepared to ensure that Ugandans continue to enjoy uninterrupted supply of power. But as I did mention, this is something that requires a little bit of reconciliation between us and the consumers out there. It is a transition window and so many activities are going on, and very, very pertinent to those is the recruitment of staff, because on 2nd of January this year we rolled out an advert to our colleagues in Umeme to ensure that they get onboarded on the side of government. And I remember, as also my shareholder will also speak shortly, our minister, Dr. Ruth Nankabira, did say that we shall have some bit of turbulence in supply because of the activities that are to do with the people. And it is so emotional, Oscar and our listeners, that in this transition phase, when you are undertaking a recruitment, some of these hitches, to be honest, we need to be realistic. They are there. They are there because people are looking for an opportunity. People are preparing to transit. So you don't expect them to be 100% on their chores. But at least we want to really comfort that we are expediting this process to ensure that by the D-Day on 1st of April, all the workforce is in. So far from that line, we have onboarded over 60% of the employees from Umeme. We rolled out an advert to fill 2,700 positions in the expanded mandate of UEDCL, and the target from our shareholders, Minister of Energy and Minister of Finance, was there shouldn't be any loss of critical skills, and that is what we are premising on. And we have been persistent in the way how we have been recruiting, persistent and consistent, because we know we don't want to over-interrupt the license of Umeme, because they still have to carry on the mandate. So we are doing it in a way that does not entirely jeopardize the operations. So far, all the structures from the chief managers, the managers, yesterday we concluded with the officers. From next week we shall be beginning to deal with the junior technicians. We are steady and we are focused to ensure that at least on the side of people, things are good to go. On the side of investments, we have also embarked on procurements to ensure that on the D-Day, there is nothing like we don't have materials in stock. Of course, you know the lead time for materials is quite long, especially if you are following the organic process. But we have framework contracts that we have with the different suppliers of the fast-moving commodities, especially we use in the power side, and we continue to have that relationship with them. Much as we will have bigger appetite in terms of the tools and the assets we'll need for the bigger network, we know at least there is something that we can leverage on day one. But also, if you have been following on events in the newspapers, we have been doing massive procurements from the start of January, and some of them are already out in terms of being cleared by the Solicitor General. We are now embarking on shipping some of the things. So we are ready on the side of logistics, but also to give comfort to Ugandan that even those very fast and critical aspects of the consumer of power, like power connections, our shareholder has already given us meters to start us off on 1st of January. You know, government has rolled out a scheme under the ESP where we shall be connecting people to hit the target of 1.2 million customers. Those connection materials are already in our hands. So we know there is pain right now because Umeme is not investing. We are privy to that. So we have to do a lot of homework on our side.
They have no reason to invest.
Absolutely.
But I want to catch up. You said you've already onboarded.
Yes.
60% of Umeme staff.
Yes.
Why would you do that? I was under the impression that at some point you're going to be looking for another Umeme, so to speak.
Okay. Oscar, thank you very much. The lease and assignment agreement that we signed with Umeme has particular tenets that bind us to that workforce. That in the last 60 to 90 days towards the end of the concession, UEDCL shall request to UMEME to provide the staff data and other related information concerning staff to UEDCL for them to be onboarded to us. We are focused on not losing that skill, because they have been so for lack of a better word, they have had, most of them have had the entire life service in the distribution sector, and the fact that our mandate is expanding, we are looking and leverage on their skills to ensure that we continue to serve you. So we have that contractual obligation to give them that first opportunity before we look for resources out. And we have not only done it to the UMEME concession, we have done it to all the other concessions, 5 concessions we have taken on. Last year we took on 2 concessions. We deployed the same philosophy to ensure that we give chance to the employees of those private concessionaires to join government. That was Kilembe Investment Limited and Chegega Rural Energy Cooperative Limited. In 2023, we did the same with Pacmex. There was a concessionaire we took on in Padera Beam Multipurpose Energy Cooperative Society Limited. The same philosophy worked. We did the same for Bex deep down in Bundibujo towards the board of DRC when we took them on in 2021. We also did the same when we took over Fadisalt in 2017. The issue here that I am trying to drive a point home to is government is focused to ensure that we don't make people unemployed. We should be the first point of call to provide employment to Ugandans. And we are doing the same with UMEME.
Okay. And just a final
Yeah.
to you. Since you are the owner, the government in this aspect,
Yes.
should we expect lower prices of electricity from 1st of April?
Quite a hard question, but I will not get tempted to speak about it. But I want to assure you that we have been seeing reductions in the prices of electricity. This question would have been well answered by my regulator, ERA, because he's by law mandated to define the tariffs and other costs that enter into electricity. Me, I am an implementer of a tariff.
Yeah.
But we anticipate it will go down. Of course, there are a number of contributing factors, including investments, including, of course, now we are not being charged. Like, for example, we will not have like the 20 we have been having, a 20% return on investment. So you really feel that there will be, and I believe, Oscar, even from 31st when my minister declared the new tariff, there was a decline of, I think, 5.2% in the tariff. It is sizable enough. And there is a determination from the side of government to ensure that this tariff continues to go down until it is down that every other person in the deepest rural areas can afford electricity.
Okay. Let's go to Dr. Patricia Kevin Litho, talking about monies to UMEME. Jonan says here that they are going to incorporate, they've already onboarded 60% of staff, but you're paying UMEME a lot of money for exiting.
Yes, it's always about contractual obligations.
Yeah.
Now, the contract that government signed with UMEME when they came on board was such that on exit, we must give them some exit money depending on the investment, the losses and things like that. And some of these funds have been paid annually. For instance, the investment losses, and then we have to check whatever else is left at the time they're exiting. So there was need to do that. In regard to paying them money, and of course sometimes it seems unfair, and Ugandans are wondering why you took over a Ugandan infrastructure, made money off it, why are we paying you to exit? But
in addition to taking your staff and
Yes.
keeping them in employment.
But unfortunately, these legal matters as such, what you are assigned to, maybe at the time we onboarded them, we felt that we needed a lot more support. We felt maybe what they're bringing on would be a lot more. But part of the decision and the question would be, why then are you taking back the infrastructure, if I may? Uganda generally is revisiting the way it does business, and it's undergoing a rationalization process where it's taking back some of the key service areas where it has learned that it is better if the government itself invests in these key infrastructure areas. So the return of the electricity distribution segment to the distributor, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company, is part of that second generation reform in the sector. We've already had the Rural Electrification Agency reabsorbed into the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Of course, the process is such that some people...
That one never really took off. So I know you people say that it came back into government, but it did not quite take off. Only politicians like Martin Mogara.
I used to work in the Rural Electrification Agency and I was absorbed in the Ministry of Energy.
Yes.
They literally closed that office and moved some stuff.
And moved you to the ministry, yes.
Yes, and let go of some. We were over 250 staff and they've barely taken 100 of us. But we've also seen the same with the Namamve thermal plant that was now moved to UEGCL from Jacobson. We have seen ESCOM hand over Narubale to UEGCL. So the Umeme UEDCL transfer, first of all, they've reached the natural end of the contract, and these assets were actually under UEDCL before. So it is in the same spirit that government is doing that, and we hope that we shall have better efficiency. And why I say that is because if you looked at Umeme, the number of external employees it came with, I think we're barely 5, if I might be correct, if I can check correctly. And then the over 2,700 staff they employed are all Ugandans. And so there's been a bit of capacity building for Ugandans, how to operate an infrastructure in a business model way, as opposed to maybe what UEB was doing. So UEDCL taking on this stuff is strategic, and we hope that we will retain the same skills. You'd worry that maybe at management there would be a difference, but even at management, most of those were Ugandans who have also been absorbed by UEDCL. So we hope that come 1st April, these same people will be onboarded, and we hope for a seamless transition where there shouldn't be a noticeable difference for a consumer of electricity.
But you see, Patricia, Umeme is a little bit different because Umeme is listed. It has about 38% of Umeme is owned by us. It's owned by the public. They have a total shares of about 630 shares. So what happens to them?
Well, these are some of the conversations that we are seeking guidance from the Solicitor General on how to handle some of these. But we have other Ugandan companies that are listed. For instance, the Vision Group is a listed company. It's owned by government. Government has the majority shareholding, and it hasn't affected.
Vision Group is in existence. But if you close Umeme, that's where the question is. You've closed Umeme, you're giving them some money as well. So what happens to the listed? What happens to the shares?
Government intends to basically hold the status quo in most of those things. So I think we need to get some more legal guidance on how to handle that, mostly because of the change of name. But in terms of the business people have invested in, it really should be the same. And the fact that government has some of its agencies listed, the same model should apply.
Yeah. And you also believe, like Janan spoke, that we are going to have more electricity. And a situation like today's on Entebbe Road may not happen then. 3 days of very poor electricity.
Yes, and I would like to explain that a bit. We not only have more electricity since Karuma came on board, so that should go without question that we already are having more electricity. But the question is that if we have more electricity, why then are we experiencing these challenges? The Ugandan infrastructure is a very old infrastructure, and generally we are refurbishing. That's why there are so many lines under construction, transmission lines, distribution lines, to improve services. And when we had the rural electrification, we had cases where it went ahead and took distribution lines where the transmission line and substations hadn't reached. So we've had some of those challenges, for instance, in the Kigezi sub-region, and recently the President commissioned the Kabale substation, which should stabilize power in those areas. But also, it goes without saying that it's understandable. There's a bit of morale lost by Umeme because they know they're existing. So before, with their business model, when there was a challenge, their response time was faster because they were making money off it. Now we've generally noticed that the response rate is lower. even if they still have to work until the 30th. And I believe that is what some of what is affecting us. So the Entebbe Road issue should have been addressed better, and we hope that government swinging on board on the first should serve better. It shouldn't be an entirely good excuse for government. I mean, we still oversee them, but we hope that things will improve. So we've had cases.
We hope so as well.
Yes.
Entebbe Road is unhappy with both electricity and water services.
And the unfortunate thing is that UDCL is already taking the beating, because in January, when the minister announced that Umeme is handing over, people understood that Umeme had already handed over. And even with the Entebbe issue, like you said, Jonan is already in trouble as UDCL. People thinking, oh, we've gone back to UEB, but we're not going back to UEB. We have learnt along the way, our efficiency has improved, and UDCL has been operating several concessions around the country that Umeme refused to take on the claim that they were not financially viable.
Yeah,
and
because they're a
UDCL has
business.
diligently served these areas, and so government is seeking to do that without looking at the business aspect.
Thank you, Patricia. Just to advise Jonah not to wear that UEDCL cap on Entebbe Road anywhere until there's electricity, because we otherwise. So, Honorable Martin Mugara, as I said earlier, you are government here. How do you see the future? Speaking in Uganda. No. The question was worded in Uganda. How do you see the future of electricity in Uganda?
No, first of all, I am happy that as government we are moving in the right direction. I was just trying to see what we inherited in 1996 when the NRM came to power. Fortunately, I've had the chance to visit Naruvale and Karuma. We've been doing Explore Uganda campaigns, and in our groups of 400, 500, we've been able to visit some of these sites and actually requested that probably people can go down there and access and see. Very, very interesting. So we inherited Naruvale, which I think was around 180 megawatt production capacity then, 86. Now we are above 2,000, and that is the investment of the NRM government. And interestingly, the president has insisted, and he says, because now the argument is that we are producing more power than we can consume, but I still know that power access to our community still stands slightly below 50%. So probably when power is to reach everyone, we might be able to consume maybe almost 2,000 megawatts. But the president has clearly said this is nothing, this is a joke, and you're going to see government investing more probably so that we can get to around 5,000 megawatts. And he has had an argument that the price of I don't know how to use the scientific terms well, but he says that at least the price of power should go below.
You can say a unit.
A unit should go below 5 cents, especially for the people in the manufacturing sector. And I believe in the next 2 years we should be able to achieve getting power at that cost. So as government, we are happy. These other technicalities of how we transition from Umeme to EDCL, well, that is secondary. What is primary is we have the power. We are looking for investment to invest in the transmission lines so that we can have. It's one thing to have the power, it's another to have it reach the people. So government is looking at all this, but I think the benchmark is that primarily now we have the power in the country and we'll continue investing more. My prayer is that to UDCL, that now you're going to take over the mantle. Hopefully you don't let us down, so that now we can see better services and see you as a better alternative for the problematic Umeme that has made a lot out of Ugandans. And you can see we are losing a lot of money because of ending this agreement between us and Umeme. And I think government is clear on this. What we got out of Umeme was not the best deal for us. They've done a good job, yes, but we believe as government we can move these resources ourselves, invest, and make sure that the Ugandans benefit. So for me, I'm happy, and I believe things will get better. Sorry about the blackouts. I also stay on Entebbe Road. I think for me, I've been lucky. I had like 3-4 during the night, but most of the night it was a bit stable. But these are challenges we'll overcome over time.
Okay. Angelo is on the Umeme exit and EDCL coming on. Abdul is in the studio. He was smiling when Martin was giving those figures.
I was actually going to
wry
ask.
smile.
Abdu whether he had thoughts on how to deal with the shareholder issue. Before you came, Oscar was asking, Umeme is a listed company.
Let's first describe his shirt. It is a fancy shirt, Simband, beyond reason. Very nice. Clearly a man who's returning from abroad.
It's a very oriental shirt that you might find in a casino in Macau.
Good morning, listeners.
Yes.
So we're discussing, Honorable Katuntu, what happens to those who have invested in Umeme shares now that the company, a listed company, is conceding its concession to the government. What is going to be the legal process of safeguarding the value? Like if I was a shareholder, I have in there, and of course there are institutional investors like NSSF who have put their money in the enterprise. What happens, and what's the legal process there?
First of all, before you invest and you're an investor, you always need to get investment advice. And sometimes, where you're investing, many of them knew they're investing in a company which was about that concession. And they had to keep in mind that concession could end tomorrow, the other day, and so on. So these are what we call risks, because remember, as you know, it is listed. And I think, what percentage? 30?
38, nearly 40%.
Yeah, nearly 40%. Yeah. So they are going to get a lot of money because we have done a payout, which to me should have been the big elephant in this room. Forget about what I was listening on the car radio when the lady and the gentleman were busy. The big elephant is in the room, the contract we had between us and Umeme.
What is Papa
and
Papa?
Even, sorry?
What is Papa Papa?
Oh, Oscar was asking whether we should speak in Uganda or light side. So we did a buyout, and we are supposed to pay that money we approved that money, I think, by a couple of weeks ago, a week ago. And it's a lot of money. So eventually that shouldn't be a problem. Their business is really this. If they based it on this concession, it has come to an end, but we paid them a lot of money. So there is nothing like them to lose, in my view.
And the institutional investors, I guess they get a big payout.
Do
they leave then? What happens?
Yeah.
Do you delist the company? I don't know what the future is like. Dr. Litho, do you have a
Let
sense?
me ask Jonan to say something since he's done.
Thank you very much. Honorable Katuntu, I think, has really given the comfort. Even for all these other concessions we have taken on, we should agree that even when you are taking on to buy shares in a company, you buy the shares knowing that there is a start of a contract and the end of the contract. All shareholders in Umeme knew that the contract will come to a natural closure on 28th of February 2005. But this was based on the principle that
we knew more,
it could be
because,
extended.
In between with the contract running, Umeme was allowed to list.
Yes.
And I must confess that I'm also a shareholder with a very small shareholding. But we knew that there will be a payout.
Yes.
So, this is good business when your business is closing, and they will even give you money to close your business. So as Abdul here says, presumably we shall get some of that money.
Yes, you will, for sure.
You do, and maybe the listeners should know the amount we are paying them. It's over $190 million US.
Okay, maybe Oscar, you asked a question. There is, of course, we have been into this transition. We couldn't run two things at a go. We are also looking at listing UEDCL. It's a process. The conversation we have already started with the Capital Markets Authority. Yes, we had our entry meetings last year, and we believe that by the time we enter at least the first quarter of this transition, we should have advanced to a certain level.
But is it a good thing? Because
yes, it is.
UEDCL
there are benefits.
is government completely.
Absolutely. There are benefits that come with listing. And we want to really explore all avenues that can make this distribution segment viable and sustainable.
Is it about raising money, or is it about having Ugandans to be part of your EDCL?
Yes, it's really both.
What?
It's really both, encouraging both continued private partnership and participation.
Such a decision should be a strategic decision, and they're like, okay, we need this sort of money, then we can list and raise money. Or you can say, well, this company is growing, but how can we get more Ugandans invest
Involved in
it
it,
and so on, and maybe make some money on it and so on. So it's really not like getting advantages, the written advantages on economics books about listing, but the strategic decision, why would you want to? And that should actually not be your decision.
Yeah.
That should be really a very, very big political decision.
It's a point for discussion.
We really
let's get Derek
agreed.
Wandera on microphone as well, on the future of electricity in Uganda. And Derek is not old enough to have known UEB.
I knew it. I knew it a little, but my question to my question to the gentleman and Patricia, whom I've met, by the way, I don't know whether you remember.
I should say, Jonan, we have Star Cafe coffee and goodies. Please tuck in. You don't need to carry a chapati in your pocket to come to gang.
I
And
thought
Sonny Abdul Katuntu
I
will
thought
not
he was
partake
fasting.
today.
He
Yeah.
doesn't look like one who is fasting.
Yeah.
My question would be that, like, the person who is listening to this show probably doesn't fall under the category that the Honorable Martin Mugara was describing, those that would get certainly a reduction in the tariffs to maybe 0.5 point something percent, especially the investors and the manufacturers. The person who is coming from their home today, and every time they end the month, there is that money they have to pay, that extra money they have to pay on their meter, on their Yaka meters and stuff like that. That person is wondering, so do they now sigh with relief that after Umeme, because we've always been told this is Umeme and stuff like that, but I also know that there is so much we can consume that even that we don't consume, we have to pay for it. Is there any hope in the near future for the final consumer, especially domestic users of electricity, to get something, to get a difference, to get a reduction in the tariffs of power?
Thank you very much, my colleague Wandera and the gangsters. But also, maybe let me just try to bring something to life. We are not paying Umeme money for nothing. The buyout amount that we are talking about, that government is paying to Umeme, is money that is unrecovered as a result of the investments they have made here. I think really this should really come out to the listeners, not to paint a bigger picture that Umeme has come and they are scooping money from government. These are unpaid investments, and it is our obligation as government of Uganda.
The merits of that concession. You really want us to do that? You want to walk that path?
Honorable,
You want to justify it?
But
Honorable, let's toe the principle as it is enshrined
I
in the
think we walk away
LAA.
from what, for those of us who have the facts, you even wonder an investment advisor or a legal advisor would have advised to sign such a concession. But the only comfort we have is that at that time maybe there was some crisis of load shedding and so on. So we did a very desperate decision. So
There was
don't
load
go
shedding.
into that way.
We also guaranteed water levels, if you remember.
Contract. You know
But I have a message here to Abdul, and the questions are not for Jonan, and Abdul is right when he's telling you jump out of it. These questions are for Patricia, because Patricia is government ministry of energy. She's the one who should be in a frying pan on this one, and maybe Martin. But message to Abdul says the payout of Umeme is on account of their investments unrecovered as at the end of a concession. Umeme isn't getting free money, and Abdul, you know it.
Maybe the service fee that my colleague Wandera is talking about.
Yeah,
that must have been from a Umeme official, of course.
The service fee, Wandera is wondering whether this will come to a reduction. I think it is early days for us to really start doubting whether it will or it will not. There is going to be a new tariff announced on 1st of April that will take us through for the second quarter, and subsequently the other remaining quarters in the year. And it is in the interest of the listener to know that there is that purposed decision that the tariffs should continue coming down. And we hope for the best as well, because it is also important that as tariffs go down, we believe also the consumption of people will continue to increase. It's supposed to be prolated. As tariffs go down, people's consumption will continue to go high. But that's a discussion also that should not be answered by myself or Dr. Litho, because government has an independent entity that sets tariffs, and they base on so many other factors to come up with a reasonable tariff that can make the sector remain afloat and also make some return to invest in the same network. But also really to speak the mind of the investor is the sector has been sustainable because we do not draw money directly from the consolidated fund. The money that we use for our services in the electricity supply chain is money that we collect directly from the consumer. And I think to me that really creates the reason why we have had a successful energy supply industry across the continent. Elsewhere, on the other parts of Europe, people are praising this energy sector. And I think there are also very good lessons that we should be speaking so proudly of as Ugandans. And because we have had benchmarking, people coming to benchmark on the energy sector, distribution sector. Like on the side of UEDC, we have been operating deep rural areas, and I'm sure I could be a service provider of Honorable Abdu Katundu. Deep down, where you see the consumption of people over the past 10 years has gradually improved. Those who are consuming 2 units, now they are consuming over 18 units. And if we could have been able to master and turn around these territories which were not economically viable, deep down in Kisoro there, where even the operational challenges are even more than these in the cosmopolitan, I think it is right timing that government takes over.
I'm going to come back to you on that one.
Okay.
But let's first go to Patricia, Dr. Patricia Litho. The biggest challenge you have is to persuade people that we are not going back to UEB. People are thinking Umeme could raise money without running Uganda into debt of 190 million, and now you're rolling back to UEB days. That's where you have a challenge, reassuring Ugandans that maybe, as Jonan says, if they've been doing it in rural areas, perhaps they could do it in give reassurance to Ugandans.
Yes.
That's your most difficult job.
Yes, it's our most difficult job, and I think the public needs to give government a benefit of doubt. First of all, from what Jonan has explained, the fact that government has demonstrated that, yes, government can efficiently be a utility provider even where the place is not economically viable. How about if now they have more income injected, where we could then address where gaps have been? I'm sure during the Umeme concession, we've also learned lessons on how to run business better. But government has also, in the last couple of years, made several infrastructure improvement. The number of substations that are coming up, the number of generation areas, and even have the backup alternatives in case we have another case where the water levels are down. We have an alternative of how we could generate power. So I think there's need for that benefit of doubt, looking at what UDCL has done elsewhere, to see that government can actually provide a service. And like Honorable Katuntu said earlier, sometimes there's a thin line between the political sentiments and the strategic decisions that government makes. Sometimes mistakes have been made, but we've also learnt how better to do the business. And I think even if government is trying to rationalize and bring these companies back together, they are more efficient, and most of these personnel are going to be kept, and we hope that we shall continue with the same model. Yes.
And then, sorry, before Jonan comes on, Martin, you wanted to say something?
No, just to support what Ito was saying, that we run a national water and sewage corporation. It's entirely Ugandan entity, and it's badly run. But
it's actually not a standard of excellence at all. But
at least it's rendering the service. So I'm just
no,
going to tell.
It's not about rendering
do you mind, Honorable, if I push back a bit? Because I think what he was saying, that we should give the government flowers, I think is what you say online, for reaching hard-to-reach areas, for improving. I mean, these are things that are required of the state. So you can't really pat yourself on the back when you've got, like Honorable said, 42% access, and that access is even distorted, Abdul, because it's concentrated in the center here and maybe parts of the east. You have an artificial surplus of electricity, and I say artificial because if you just bring in, like because I was on the board of the investment authority, our fear was signing up just 2 or 3 large industries, and that artificial surplus would be gone. And that's the real situation we are facing. I mean, that's the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned. If you look at hydropower capacity, I was looking up the grid development plan, that this is a 10-year plan that UETCL produces. I used to read that stuff religiously. But if you read it, you'll be depressed, because the total hydropower capacity in Uganda is about 3,000 megawatts. Now, let's assume that we go in the direction of technology, Oscar, and you bring just one data center, a large one, that requires about 1,500 megawatts. We are done. Okay? So, in fact, for me, I think that the public concerns would be, you have a country of 47 million people, rural-urban migration at a rate of about 6 to 7% ongoing, 22 million people in our towns and cities by 2040. Even if you're thinking about this as a business, and this is a capital-intensive business, I think we should sit up and say the challenges we're facing are much, much, much more severe. And therefore, if you have a major policy change, as Dr. Litho was describing this, Honorable Katutu, as second-generation reform, we had gone private sector. We are now moving backwards. It's a sort of reverse privatization. What are the embedded risks there? And I reject the view, by the way, Oscar, that the fiscal discipline that we don't see in other parts of the government can be replicated in UEDCL. Whereas, it's the same people running the show. If you're not physically disciplined, okay, you have run over the debt ceiling. What assurance do you have, really, that you have the fiscal discipline to bring in the investments that you need to cover the ground, like I say, that is fast shrinking? I don't know. I'm not particularly overconfident, even if I support the idea that Ugandans should be fully in charge of operating these entities. Thank you, Oscar.
Well, remember, had become Ugandan really in all its operation and so on. But I that's in addition to what I was going to ask Jonan as well, because Martin did say it here, Honorable Mugara, when he said that we have a so-called surplus electricity, but more than 50% are not on the grid. So that's a contradiction, isn't it?
Okay.
Maybe a quick response, and Jonan could interject. I would just start with what Angelo said about the discipline. I don't know, maybe you'll guide on the discipline with UEDCL, but looking at how they've been operating the concessions,
He said government
fiscal
discipline,
generally,
yes.
and even national, even if
the issue is fiscal discipline.
Fiscal discipline, yes, that's what I'm talking about. I think we have some cases where there's been relatively good performance, but again, like I said, we need to be given a benefit of doubt, and of course maybe we don't have a very good example, so I shouldn't overventure into that. But the main emphasis I wanted to make is government awareness that is actually artificial excess power. And that's why we have several generation plants already in the offing, because we are aware that any single major investment could take away what Karuma has brought on board. At least investments like in Orio, we have Ituka Solar, and several other feasibility studies that have been done, with potential sites that have been identified where more generation could come from. But also we've got continued transmission investment that is happening, not only to improve stability and access, but also to reach several areas where we see more industries coming up, especially with the increased mineral investment that's coming up. But let me ask Jonan to add a bit.
I know it really it is, Oscar, this is a big worry. Angelo is talking about the fiscal discipline. Honorable Katuntu and the Parliament of Uganda did approve the buyout amount, but also they approved the investment capital required for UEDCL to manage the distribution grid. Henceforth, actually for the next 5 years. I think the investments of Umeme have been $34 million here. And the Parliament approved the other day $50 million, which is almost 2 times what Umeme has been investing here. And I think we are also privy to the fact that the network is fast. There are so many developments growing each day, and we must make sure that the distribution investments are commensurate with the demand, how it is going. And I think we are really, I don't want really to overemphasize and also overpromise, but government has already showed commitment by getting us the money in, and we hope this is going to be sustained for the next 5 years, because the undertaking is 5 years. Our plan though was to invest $70 million, but we still appreciate
but
that
that's
government.
a drop in the ocean. You've seen the projections on what is required.
But Angelo, we are coming from $34 million. If we are coming from $34 million to 50, I think we should really be able to appreciate so far that there is a stride made
the last
from the
grid
existing
development plan.
investment.
Actually, I think costed the overall stability of the grid would require about $10.2 billion.
Yes, that is true.
At a rate of at a rate of what per year?
Okay, Angelo, let's create a distinction to the listener between the distribution segment, the required investment in the distribution segment and the transmission segment. Because once we combine this discussion, the listener out there may not get the benefit of appreciating this transition we are in. Investments in transmission should be treated as investments in transmission, and those in distribution should be treated as investments in distribution. Why I am here today, even generation, why we are here today, Honorable Katuntu, why we are here today is to discuss the Umeme UEDCL transition. And I would want really to urge the gangsters, let's stick our efforts to dissect the distribution segment so that we don't confuse them.
That's like saying what one arm is doing should not be related to the other arm.
Angelo interjected, I think, when I was trying to make a point.
No.
And I want to appreciate what Angelo is raising. But you see, there is a difference between the actual reality and projections he's speaking to. The actual fact is that we are consuming slightly less than probably 1,000 megawatts currently in Uganda, plus what we export. Uganda is actually a powerhouse. We are trying to put up lines to sell to Sudan, to sell to DRC, to sell to all over. What we are consuming now, we have a surplus of around 1,000. And trust me, I can assure you, just like we grew the production from 180 megawatts to 2,000 from 1986, I want to assure you that the president is clear on this. Probably will go to 4,000, 5,000 in the next 10 years. And it's going to be an energy mix. It doesn't have to be only hydro, it is solar, it is even nuclear, probably. So I just want to allay the fears of Angelo that we'll get there as we move. But I think the focus is clear and probably on the right path.
Yeah, yes, Derek. What Jonan especially needs to remember that we have a worry every time there's government coming into things. We think about government as Abdul is saying, fiscal discipline, poor delivery. Government people are the rich people, not us. I want to buy one see. So that those are the bigger concerns. Yes, Derek.
Yeah, but Honorable Mugara is actually giving very, very beautiful and flowery figures. But I also understand when Angelo comes in like that had talked, because you look at a region like the entire West Nile that has suffered with power for forever. A very good friend of mine, Mase Munduru, she's actually celebrating her birthday today, has been a champion of calling on government to think about West Nile and stuff like that. And when Honorable says we're a powerhouse, distributing to South Sudan, distributing to Kenya, distributing to DRC, and yet we've failed to just do that within our own country, it worries more that we are even
Yes.
going the way it is. So I do understand where Angelo is coming from.
Yes, and someone here sends a message, says, give Izama his flowers. The speed of construction of power plants is 7 to 10 years from inception, and continues. And Moses Pierahanga says, well, Abdul, shareholders of Meme, when the company closes, that's the end. The government will not have shares. They will not have shares in that company. And tells you, Angelo, stop worrying. Remember, generation is owned by government, transmission is owned by government. So if Umema has been doing well, then government was doing well.
Okay, maybe
Conclusions.
Let me conclude, Oscar. But I think to me it really sheds this, again extra support on the side of our Honorable Katuntu, that we should give priority now to the energy sector. In my opinion, we have seen all these worries. We are raising concerns, but we should be also astute when it comes to curating investments, both even at parliament level. When a budget comes and it is attuned to energy, my opinion would be, for us to demand these answers downstream, we should be able to answer these same answers upstream, where the budgets are appropriated, where budgets are approved, so that you have a correct demand of answers downstream. So to me, I think we all have a responsibility there.
Yes.
But also,
Actually, Angelo's word comes to mind: fiscal discipline.
yeah, but also to really give confidence to Honorable Katuntu and my colleague in trade, Angelo Izama. UDCL has not just existed today. We are making 24 years in April, and we have been operating side by side. There is not really so much that should worry you. If there was to be something bad, 24 years is old enough for you to know that there is rot or there is indiscipline in such a government agency. But that has not been the case. And the reason why it is so, we have been running a sustainable model of business. We have not been relying on borrowing. Actually, I think in the energy supply industry, Honorable Katuntu can attest, UDCL doesn't have a loan, a direct loan. We have been running our business based on the resources we derive from our constituents.
Okay.
And to me, that is really good discipline enough that we should celebrate.
But also look at the size of the business you have been running and the size of the business you are going to
Yes,
run.
they're taking
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and that's why Honorable has approved the monies.
From micro, now you're going to a huge
Oscar.
thing.
And Honorable, we
I'm
thank
telling
you.
The challenge is not all that easy now.
Oscar, maybe
Yeah.
just to say as well, like he's saying, but an investment in energy alone is not the actual solution. You must create a demand for this energy. You must invest in the roads. You must invest in the production of the people, so that the viability of investing in energy can be of a good cause to the government. And that is why what Angelo is saying, us investing $10 billion, it won't be a solution on its own. We must invest in all the other factors to create production and demand for power.
Okay.
So
Last
it's
word
like-
on this topic,
We've already
Dr.
given them
Patricia
$10
Litho.
billion.
As Abdul has said, the Umeme had an office that was countering all the insults and the abuse and so on. You've not seen it yet. From 1st, 2nd April, you are going to see the vitriol coming your way if a service is like Entebbe Road lately. Are you prepared for that? Use this last minute of a topic before we go for a break.
Yes, Oscar, thanks for the opportunity, and all the gangsters for the constructive feedback. Government is prepared. And all this feedback that has been maybe harsh, constructive feedback from the public, we are often part of it. We actually have a consortium of both technical and communicators in the sector, where we share thoughts when there's a challenge, where there's an insult to Umeme, we all sit back and agree on how to handle this. So we've been together, though not at the far front, and now UDCL is going to be at the far front, and we have the confidence that they will represent the government effectively.
Okay. Thank you so much. I beg your pardon.
After
Come
year.
to the. I beg your
Thanks
pardon.
for
Say
the
that
offer.
again.
Oh, we can't wait to invite them after a year.
Yeah.
Even 6
And-
months.
And please,
or
Assistant Commissioner.
after a month.
Honorable.
So thank you so much, Dr. Patricia Kevin Litho, Assistant Commissioner for Information and Communication in the Ministry of Energy. Thank you very much, Jonan Kiza, Head Corporate and Stakeholder Affairs. You have a big task on your hands. We wish you luck, and we shall invite you back here to the hot seat. We stop
Thank
for a
you.
break. Welcome from the break. The electricity people are out, and let's go to Kawempe. Derek Wandera, there's an election coming up in Kawempe. When is that election, and what are the events? You know, before I came into the studio, Abdu, people were saying to me, happy birthday and so on. And we talked about the mortality rate for men in Uganda is about 62, 63. And 63 now. And Angel was saying, well, it depends on if there's no election. When there's an election, it comes down to 55. So,
You have to adjust it downwards.
so seeing that there's an election, and I also work in Kawempe, maybe mortality rate is coming down. So
Especially for politicians.
Yeah.
Stress is up.
Oscar, the election in Kawempe is going to be happening on the 13th. That's a few days away from today. Many political parties are doing their final touches in the campaigns. In an election, we are just coming from electricity to election. In an election that is that has continued to.
we forgive you. It's a very difficult word. Some
Yeah.
people sometimes call it erection. Or
No,
election.
not that one.
Yeah.
An election that has posed so many challenges and risen very many eyebrows of especially the political players in this country, but we, the journalists who take this information to the people. Every by-election in Uganda has always posed its own challenges. But this one of Kawempe is so unique that we are just a few months away from the general election across the country, and it has already given a precursor of what we are to expect. Lots of violence.
Some people would say it has been peaceful. There's a
No one
candidate,
can say that, Oscar.
candidate Nambi. She was
No
able
one
to
can
have
say
a
that.
procession.
No.
I have video.
No one can say
she
the
was-
election has been peaceful unless they are not staying in the country. And for me, I always speak with a heavy heart because I've been a victim of a very violent election, and this has continued even in this kind of election. Small election in Kawempe North has turned out a very big election for the nation. Just trying to predict what's going to happen this year in November, or even there before, that there is going to be a lot of violence on us who are journalists who are supposed to be in the middle, but then there's also going to be a lot of violence on a certain section of the political divide, and that's the opposition. When I was covering elections in the last political cycle, I was attached to the opposition, one of the opposition candidates, and the kind of violence that was there was so unprecedented to the extent that many of the journalists with whom I covered that election have vowed never to go back to the field to cover elections. And yet, those that covered the ruling government are begging media houses to tag them to the political party, because there was a time when we were heading, I think we were heading to the east, and the president.
Say that again.
There was a time we were heading to the east.
Who are begging what and for what reason?
Because it is peaceful there. I mean, it's a bed of roses. It's a walk in the park, covering the president. There was a time we were heading to the east. We were heading, I think, to Tororo or Busia, and we met the president's campaign team and entire entourage around Iganga. So we had a stopover as journalists to just exchange and just discuss what's happening on your end. And these people were moving with sausages in their hands. They are coming, munching away sausages. For us, we were all wearing bulletproof masks, bulletproof vests, putting on helmets, and we were all gutted with a lot of dust around us, and these people were wearing their shorts and munching away sausages, and we said, are these people covering elections in the US? Oh, what's so elections elections in this country have gone to that level, that there is a different, now when you are talking about the Honorable Nambi and anyone around her, of course, for journalists who are covering President Museveni, they would wonder, so what's wrong? Why are you people dressed like this? Because they don't have any reality touch with violence. So they could easily write a story like, the most peaceful election, if they weren't listening to what was coming from the other, the other side of the...
I'm going to move you from a microphone, but before that, I can predict what Martin is going to tell you. He's going to tell you that you NUP people inspire violence, because someone even said you hire the police yourselves to beat you up.
With the journalists?
No, the NUP people.
The NUP people.
But it's you saying that.
No, he's
No,
predicting
I'm
what you're
predicting.
going to say.
I know his script is there. I'm predicting what he's going to say.
You see, if you hire the police to inflict violence on you, that's okay. Then you deal with the people who have hired you. But then when you cross to people who have not hired you, then it ceases, that debate ceases to be true. Because we've seen that the violence doesn't just end on the politicians. Say if it's NUP buying the police, it's even laughable that NUP is buying police to come and kill some of their people, to run over them with police patrol cars, and to torture them. And then they end up beating us who are covering this kind of mayhem.
Yeah, okay.
It becomes pathetic. It becomes unprecedented, and I feel
let's go to Abdul.
There needs to be a lot to be done.
I have in the studio a guest, Mr. Robert Sempala, Executive Director of HRNJ, Defense and Promotion of Freedom of Expression, Information and Media Freedom. You're most welcome to Gang. We shall get you to speak. It is. But Abdul, you were away from Uganda, and you could see all the news coming from Uganda. Even USAID information died out, and brutality was what we were exporting over the world.
I think we are in the news, but not for good reasons, unfortunately. You just have to open up your little phone every day on social media, and it's all about Uganda, it's all about violence that you are seeing, you know, and the world has moved so much that these things are being seen in real time, and you don't even have to be a journalist like Derek here to report it. You know, anybody with like a small phone is busy picking that picture and throwing it to the entire world. But even before I go into this, there's something which amuses me, and I still grapple with it, especially the journalist. You see, you're always saying, you know, can you imagine they are beating up journalists? You know, if this Rogo security officer is going to beat up an innocent MP, who is you, the journalist? You'll be beaten up too. Right. And why? Because he's beating up an innocent MP. You can't be an exception. After you're the one who covering the beating.
He's beating everyone.
He's beating everyone. So, and by the way, sometimes
what you're saying,
if you know,
don't say it is okay to beat opposition, and then you say it is wrong to beat journalists.
For us journalists, we can't let them beat. No, a rogue security officer who will beat up an innocent voter on the street, innocent, will certainly beat up a journalist. Actually, it would be worse for a journalist, because the journalist will be exposing him even more.
Collecting
he
evidence.
Has committed a crime against him, whereas the other voter has not even done anything. So let us know that once we have a problem, we are all cooked, regardless of what you are. But let me go back to election. Elections are supposed to be a civic exercise where it's a reflection that the community, the society has elected its own leader. And for us who are leaders, elected leaders, we should be proud of that we have been entrusted, we've been given confidence by this electorate, and here we are their leaders. If you've got this infrastructure called security coming in, really to turn this civic exercise into a war, a real war, guns, masks, where I have been, somebody asks, say, by the way, if these security officers were doing a legitimate job, why are they covering their faces? And Martin, it's very difficult to defend some of these things. You must have reckless courage too to defend some of these things all over. However patriot you could be as a Ugandan, you don't want, to talk badly about your country or even about your government and so on. It is just too difficult. It is inexcusable. It doesn't make sense. These guys do something. I was looking at this. I read it. It was a police officer, DPC Wandege or something like that. And I'm like, does this guy have a family? When you go back home, the wife is saying, welcome back, dear. Your children are asking you, oh, dear, daddy, that was a good punch. It's terrible. And the one who is doing it differently said, okay, me, I'll do the worst one, but let me cover my face with some Dracula mask.
The DPC was punching people?
Oh, yes, it's on this. Okay, I was thousands of miles away from Kampala, but I can see it's somebody called Hassan, blah, blah, blah. And he's busy punching, So, to me, I don't know who benefits from all of this. One, is it the NRM? Then I also read that even people like, of all people, Tango Doi were like saying, no, this is unacceptable. Tango Boy was saying, this is we can't allow. What is this? I saw sending the complaining. Literally, everybody is complaining. And I'm asking, who is the beneficiary of all of this? So Abbas, Afand Abbas, via Kagava, really, you've got to clean out. You've got to clean this thing out. And I'm sure even Justice Simon is so ashamed because he can't explain it. You can't organize a process and it is hijacked by a certain group, no rules, beating up people. It is just too bad. This country has moved on. And when you hear this gentleman, my brother Martin, saying, in 1986, what brought 1986? It was because in 1980, allegedly, elections had been violent and rigged. Then you move 40 years later, and you are talking about election violence, you are talking about rigging. You go back to Eric Blair's book. Some of you call him Angelo, Eric Blair?
No, I do not know Eric Blair.
Okay. He's George Orwell. His real name.
His
real name is
you
George
tricked me
Orwell.
there. Yeah, if you had asked me,
his real name is Eric Blair.
If you had asked me, what is George Orwell's real name, I would have come to it.
Yes, that's what it is. When you, Martin, this is how it goes. When the animals came and looked at Jones and the pigs, and they were having wine and so on. So they looked from the pig
to the man,
to the man, and then from the man to the pig, and then from the pig to the man again, and there was no difference. Have we reached that level?
Mr. Sempala, I actually invited a police officer, SCP Chituma Rusoke, and as I was coming here, he was so unwell he couldn't make it. He sent apologies. Couldn't make it to Ghana.
No, we should pray for him. We should pray for him to recover soon.
But you're sounding very sarcastic.
No, not me.
We are praying he recovers.
I talked to him, yes. So, Mr. Sempala, what was the situation in Kawempe? And what does your office handle about violence in an election?
Yeah, I come from the Human Rights Network for Journalists Uganda. It's a media rights organization. And Derek Wandera here is one of the beneficiaries of our work. He, on different occasions, has been a target. So, like many others, in Kawempe, certainly, like Honorable Abudu Katuntu has said, it's unacceptable to beat people in a civic exercise, especially an election where people are supposed to chant praises for their candidates. And I do not know what provokes the anger and who prepares such masked and, a very, very angry group of armed people to come and descend on such people, including journalists. When we normally talk about journalists being targeted, some people feel we are very selfish for not talking about the rest of the people. But we also have clear-cut mandates, because if I started, pleading for the NUP, maybe my license will be no more tomorrow. So I know how to tread cautiously, not that we are blind to the violence that is meted out on other people. And even in most cases, we have journalists covering and exposing most of these violent acts. Actually, if it were not for the journalists around to, profile the individual perpetrators, show that so and so is synonymous with violence wherever maybe NUP or the political parties have gone, the public would never have known. So in a way, we also contribute to building a democracy through championing a cause for an election that is transparent, is credible, and is fair. The journalists do a lot of that work. But in this particular case, one of the journalists that fell victims was Ibra Miracle, was discharged on Wednesday. We took him back to his home, but he has not fully recovered. He still has open wounds on his eyes. He has bones cracked, and he has so far undergone 3 surgeries, different surgeries. Of course, he's in pain, to say the least. And he won't be able to work for some good time. Just like Jimmy Akena is now, is holed up somewhere in Gulu, trying to do petty things to make a living. We've gone to his home, but it's a pity to see a person of his stature, who was a renowned journalist globally, that is now holed up in a place and he can't do his work. But the perpetrators of such acts on him walked away scot-free. We saw David Moho's match a few guys and sentenced them to between 30 to 90 days, but that was not proportionate, to befitting. That was at least a mocal of justice, but at least we welcomed the gesture, because he came out and apologized and later on said, okay, what do we do? At some point, they reached out to the owners of media houses, and a football game was arranged, because the owners said, okay, what do we do with you? Because they have no force of law, even if they wanted to do so much. So we engaged in a football game, and later it had some results, but David Muhoz never stayed long. Now a lot of things are happening, maybe under another leadership. We do not know how to engage now the current leadership to see how things will change around, because violent acts are now resurfacing. Twitter, maybe we'll engage on Twitter, but then I've seen where somebody was questioning where these masked people are coming from, and there was an explanation, elaborate one from the CDF, and it was really not befitting. So in this particular case, we do not know how to safeguard the journalists, because they operate in a public space, which is by every measure supposed to be secure for them to work. We have encouraged journalists always to blend very well, so that they can be recognized on the instant. But that has also had its negative part, because you're targeted because you're a journalist and carrying a camera. Because for Ibra's case, when you talk to him, they targeted him because he had a camera. And there was an order to that effect, and the journalists that had the order initially ran away immediately, but Ibra was
there was an order says
the media they said the media, and once that happened, the others ran away. They're the ones that were able to capture a bit of what happened to Ibra. Even in the case of a journalist whose footage was he declined to delete the one of Spark TV, but they descended on him, dragged him to the drone, beat him up, kicked him. A lot of things happened onto him, and their only order was delete. He said, I can't delete, this is my journalistic work. Because in an industry, Oscar, everyone has their raw materials, and that was his information. If you do not have information, you're out of the industry practically.
There's also Stephen
Mbide. You saw about 8 men in uniform, police uniform this time, guns, and this guy had already been subdued. They continue to pull him to different sides, kick him down there. He spent the whole night taking pain relievers, and he sustained injuries on his leg. And Midday is known to those people because he normally does live relays around that place. So they knew what they were doing. In this particular case, we cannot know. The more reason he was targeted. Because we cannot say that these are mistaken identities.
Strange
Journalists
because
learn so well.
he works with them.
No, he doesn't work with them. But the fact
I mean, when
that,
he's doing those live relays and so on and so forth.
yes, he goes around, and that time he explained himself so well that he was there to interview the Secretary General of, so you do not beat up people, even when you do not know them. As the police, as the army, as security facets arrest them, rend them before a court of competent jurisdiction. For the lawyers who tell you, then adduce evidence, implicating them, and they have a right to be heard. And the neutral arbiter will find them guilty or not. If they are guilty, then a sentence will be served to them. But in this particular case, it's very, very devastating, where you have the men in uniform constitute themselves into a jury, they find you guilty, and even decide the punishment on the instant.
Everything.
So you have no court of appeal in this regard.
Well, by the time you appeal, you are injured.
You're injured,
Yes.
just like Ibra.
Angelo, is it a war? Because
It is a war.
It is a war.
I mean, everyone can see it from the optics.
You see, what the leaders in NRM have said, for example, those who have said that these were bought and so on, but they were delivered in police cars. You may not know which force it was, but the delivery.
I don't think it matters anymore now
Yeah.
to distinguish between the services. Especially in an election, it's a very blended effort. I read somewhere that the police had been reinforced by the anti-terrorism crack units. Incidentally, someone should do, Derek, you should take this up. Do a story on the training that those special forces go through. They're killing machines,
Yeah.
We spend a lot of money, collaborations, teaching them how to kill with precision. Then we arm them with assault rifles, very expensive ones,
For killing.
and all kinds of gear. So to see them in a civilian setting with unarmed citizens, that was kind of disappointing, I think. And there's a need for us to all reflect seriously about what this means. And it's not even about the election and the legal issues in there. I think this is basically about power and maybe a sense of entitlement some people have. I'm reading between the lines that there must be people who just feel entitled. They are not only above the law, they are just entitled. They have the country, the rest of us just live in it, or something like that. But the optics are bad. It's bad for the party that is in charge, and I think the public is beginning to sense the limits of this violence now. I see a lot of pushback. I just came back from Tanzania. I love Dar es Salaam. And I in the morning I walked over to the SGR station. They have a big, station there. It's very fancy, electric trains now are running there, and the economy is big. But Tanzania, coming back from a place like that, and on the way back, the conversations about Ugandans is like, what's going to happen? Remember, so we were in Tanzania to support the oil and gas sector. I know I pushed back on Dr. Litho and the team, but there are sectors in Uganda that are planned for the long term. So if you're making major investments in energy, for example, now we have got an oil sector that is on the verge of production. It is capital intensive. We have a lot of collaborations there, blended finance. So the investors on the other side, of course, they read these reports and they ask themselves, what is going to be the future of this enterprise? Even where you have a money invested. But for Ugandans, the ones who are spending their careers trying to build the infrastructure for the long term, they look at what's happening in politics. They look at those images, and then they're afraid. They're like, what are we really doing? You know, this thing could come crashing down at any time. And I think that's the overall worry. So I sit back and I tell myself, you know, as Ugandans, we really must respect our history of extreme violence, you know. And many times, Abdu, I retreat to Justice Arthur Oda's report on the Commission on Human Rights Abuses, 1962 to 1986. You read that report and you can see where we have come from. We certainly don't want to go back there. And those who are in charge of this, these friends of yours, honorable, you know, tell them to take a chill pill, relax, okay? Let this exercise become civic. Even those of us who don't think elections and political parties amount to much, you know, we do not want to see innocent people maimed, killed, disappeared. Now in the news every day, someone has been disappeared
or rescued.
Yeah, this is not 1983, you know.
This
Really,
one
we need to.
This one is rescued. This one was tortured.
You know, you live here, Oscar. Let me just make a final point. So I'm going to live here, go to a branch, young Ugandans in their late 20s, early 30s. My neighbors are getting married. They have 2 children. A third is on the way. Okay, so the stakes are really high. You know, I think the guys who are sitting in their offices are unleashing violence. You understand the stakes are high. That there are 47 million Ugandans there who deserve a right to a predictable future. Yeah, that's what's at stake.
Before we go for the break, Moses Berhanga tells you, Derek, that West Nile is on the electricity grid. You'd said they are not.
I said they have been suffering for a long time.
He was quick to chip in. The 2025 World Rally, WRC Safari Rally, is set for March 20th to 23rd in Naivasha, Kenya. It's not just a road trip, but an adventure of a lifetime. Are you going, Abdul?
And no, I've been away for some time. I need to concentrate on my job here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's stop for a break, and I'll tell you some more before I come to Honorable Mugara here. We'll come back from the break. All microphones have gone to the Honorable Mugara of the NRM, who benefits from such state violence. Honorable Martin Mugara.
I don't benefit really. And I remember the Honorable Bahati made a statement on behalf of government. It's very unfortunate. We condemn this brutality unleashed towards the fourth estate. It's unfortunate, and I think our prayer is that it doesn't continuously happen. But I also just want to speak about how did we get here in the first place, and I think this is important that as we are laying blame, we look at both sides of the coin. I'm now off the journalist issue. Definitely, there is no defense from us in government. It's bad, and it should stop. But you're in a scenario where I have just been seeing today on social media. I think the Honorable Chagulanyi is going somewhere in Imbogo, and they're already posting things on Twitter to get a bit down. They are going to do what happened probably that very day when we had issues that probably finally spilled over to even some of our journalists. I think it's unfortunate. There is a.
What did they do? I wasn't here, so I don't know. What did they do?
Which
they are going to repeat?
No, I'm going to speak to it probably because we've seen over time, and this has happened actually to the NRM. If you look at the build-up, I remember the 2021 election. Especially within the Kampala area, what happened to the NRM supporters? Being beaten and dressed by NOP, vehicles burnt, and there seemed to be no condemnation. Yes, and I think we should be fair here. I mean, the blame always comes on one side, and we also we don't condemn the actions of some of our players on the other side. I have seen NOP train a whole military brigade. Unfortunately, it's a civilian one, with foot soldiers both on ground and on social media, and armed with even ranks from general to colonel to corporal to private. Definitely, and you could see the force with which they were trying to, of course, confront the police and the other security agencies. And usually, this is where the violence starts from. Because you have someone who legitimately has the right to use any of the weapons under particular circumstances to defend themselves or defend and protect the other citizens against an individual who has no right but cannot take any of these orders. Whether they are good orders or bad, that can be a discussion for another day, but confrontation is bad. And usually, these are the results. So my prayers to my colleagues as well, do not provoke. Do not provoke these armed men. Do not run them down. I have seen people beat the police. I have seen civilians recently disarming the military. And of course now, if a statement is not made from the security side, I think this can become a usual trend. So now you have a force that is trying to show everyone that indeed we are in charge, and they are doing it at whatever cost, which is unfortunate. So my prayer is that we also exercise restraint. When we are told to do something, we do it, so that we don't end up where we are. We've had police people killed. It's unfortunate that your person you had invited from police is not here. But I think this is a discussion we should have. And I would be happy if I had the media that was there on that day saying that the behavior of the Noop Brigade, for me they are soldiers. And I don't know why. Because if you're a soldier and you're meeting another soldier, you should expect violence. So they should stop calling themselves... No, you see, that can be another discussion, but terming yourself a soldier can qualify you to be one. So probably
in
they should
law or in common sense.
No, in your own thinking.
Martin.
Right.
What Martin is saying, then you qualify for court martial.
Yes, you no, I didn't say that. But we've seen some of them beat. Indeed, they have beaten people. They have acted with a lot of impunity. So if you've trained and dressed in that kind of way and you meet that kind of resistance from the other side,
Honorable Martin.
Let me just conclude.
You know, this is
You
women.
are
This
just
is
not
I
looking
know
good.
this is very unpopular.
You are
but
just not
this is
looking
Women's
good.
Day, and this is Women's Day, and a lot of women will recognize your argument because it is one of the pillars of what they describe as toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, where you blame the victim.
Yeah.
This argument you're making is what we recognize as blaming the victim, shifting the blame. Please walk away from it.
No, Angela, what I'm trying to say is there should be some blame. You cannot convince me that there shouldn't
It
be
is there,
any
but,
blame whatsoever.
But
on the
by
other side.
but
I
by your
think
analysis, we should just beat up the Boy Scouts who dressed it. They have ranks.
Just to give you information, it is true in the last election, some people wearing yellow were attacked. But the numbers are now available. There were very few. So in comparison to the state attacking opposition, it's you can't even refer to it anymore. It's embarrassing. But Ofuno Pondo, for about 2 years, used to come here in an overall to gang, and we never accused him of being a soldier.
But
I've also seen on social media many NRM putting on yellow overalls with the tops and similar like those of them and puts on red. They put on what? Yellow. There are many all over, including tax towels. You just go opposite Uganda House, opposite. You'll see them. And to me, there is nothing wrong with it. He's a NRM activist. He's an enthusiast supporter. He shows. Many of them actually dress those things daily, and there's nothing wrong with it. You can't say, well, since he's putting on this overall with this, then he's a soldier. Really, please.
Honorable Abbott, and I remember that's why I said that they are both foot soldiers on ground. I've seen so many of them opening ways, acting as traffic officers. They have all these kinds of people in their kind of brigade. Well, artificial indeed, but you see, that's what I'm saying.
Even borders are helping us to regulate traffic because
sometimes.
So do you call them policemen?
It's a self-inflicted problem. But let me conclude.
Hold on, don't conclude yet, because I want you to speak. I want you to speak last because you are a bit outnumbered on this one.
Oscar, yes, as maybe just conclude on this.
Martin, don't conclude because I'm coming.
I just wanted to understand from Honorable when he says these people are provoking the forces. provocation would be that these people have worn all these overalls of theirs, and they have gone to, say, a military detach and started pelting them. Because we know our laws as per elections in this country. Who is supposed to man, say, a polling station or a rally? We know. And we don't see anywhere the army being involved. Now, if you find the army on the streets beating up people, and honorable, you come and say that these people have provoked the army. What exactly are you trying to mean?
But if a police officer tells you, do not use this route because of probably particular reasons, managing traffic, but also the safety of the very candidates. If anything happened to Chagulanyi, God forbid, it would be a disaster for the NRM government. And he tells you, use the other. And you said, no, forcefully, I'll remove all the barricades and forcefully move ahead. What do you expect in response or in retaliation to keep you in line? So I think someone should be able to take orders. Otherwise, if no one is taking orders, then what becomes of the whole situation? And that is where
you make a good point. The accusation was that the Reds were not allowed a particular route, that the Yellows were allowed. That was the big accusation.
Yes, but all of you, because I've participated in elections, they are gazetted routes and the places of convergence for all the parties. We all cannot use the same route. Otherwise, you'd actually have a bigger disaster. So if one has been gazetted for NRM, you should use another. But someone should take orders. Someone should be able to take orders. And that's the purpose of law enforcement. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense going forward.
Right.
And the new people should know that there is an enforcement team. There is a law that is still working in this country, and I am sure that probably over time, and this is probably my prayer is, because the way I look at things, I see the people getting more agitated, probably getting more prepared, ready for confrontation going forward. And I think someone needs to have a discussion, talk to them so they can also tone down, as we talk to our people as well. Please deal with these people. Yes, they pretend to be
victims.
No, they pretend to be foot soldiers and whatever, but they are not. Deal with them in a more humane way.
Mr. Sempala, any response? He's saying...
I think the Honorable is trying to justify something that is very hard for anyone to understand. There is no amount of provocation, at least there is no demonstrable provocation that has come out to the fore, not even in Parliament, that has come to the floor for discussion. So what everyone is wondering, okay, so assuming there is a provocation, Oscar, what amount of energy or force or retaliation do you use on these other people that have maybe chanted praises for their candidates? How do you even justify the emergence of such masked and, people that you cannot even entrust your camera with? Because for the journalist's case, Oscar, the journalist said, now who are you? How can I even give you my camera? Because you do not have a name tag, you're masked, you're like rogues. Yeah? So I think it would be so humane to admit that all went wrong. If we must have a peaceful electoral process in this country, the forces that are supposed to man public order should be given all the room, not handing it over as though it's the last. That would be the last resort. It can't be the first point of reference.
That's quite interesting what he says. And you say delete this, and you have no proof of who is telling you to delete. Can be very interesting. But Abdu, you've come in with a book, Elon Musk, and I want to donate these last 15 minutes to Mr. Trump in America. There's first of all tariffs. He sets tariffs, removes them, gives them another month. Zelensky stood up to the big man, and then now it looks like he has succumbed. So what's your view of the world in the next 4 years with President Trump in America?
First of all, it's less than, I think, 60 days.
Less than 50 days.
50 days since it took oath. But the world seems to have really, really changed. One, we are back to the arms race now in full swing. Back to to me, that's the most serious matter. the biggest ally of the United States, time immemorial, has been Europe. And now, post-World War, they came up with an international geopolitical alliance, the National Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. And it seems like it is collapsing today. Europe is on its own. The first thing they did is like they are all going to increase now their budget on defense, and also to recognize that the US will not be there for them at some point in time. So to them, they're on their own. That alone, and that alone is a very, very big problem. I'm sure China is taking notes. I'm sure countries like even South Korea is taking notes, because as you know, the US or the Western has been the patron of South Korea, which is also armed to the teeth with a big army, one of the biggest armies and most sophisticated armies on planet Earth today. So it is now taking its notes. It might also decide, many of them will start to go nuclear and increase their qualities and quantities of the nuclear arsenal they do have. 2, trade wars all over the world. The biggest trading partner of the US is Canada, is Mexico, is China. And he has opened up 3 wars on all of them. Never mind that tomorrow he says I've imposed tariffs, then 12 hours later I said, okay, let me delay them a bit or this. But for the business communities in any of these countries now cannot really plan and say, look here, this is my market, because you don't know how that market is going to behave. So the international market is now very volatile, including the markets within the US itself. Very, very volatile. They don't know what next, how the money works up. And sadly, he seems, and the Democrats agreed to this, they started this thing about executive orders. They didn't realize that somehow the opponent might get in that office, and now he seems to be ruling more by decree than a legislative Senate or Congress process. He wakes up the following day and there it is. Not even his cabinet is aware of some of those decisions. It's only, I think, 24 hours ago he said, if cabinet you can't do this, Elon Musk is going to do it, and so on. So
Yeah.
I came with actually 4 books of biography of Elon Musk, and I'm going to gift you with one of them. I've read one, the 3 I'm yet to read them, including one of Isaacson. What Isaacson, the one who did the Steve Jobs official biography. So seems like Musk is the power man behind everything
For now.
For now, his relationship now with Moscow, with the Kremlin, is also now nobody understands it now. Is it about business, or is it about as we first, Moscow is the biggest arsenal power, so we need to find a way of dealing with them honestly. But if he does that, what happens to his biggest ally, Europe? So really, the world seems to be in a very, very delicate situation today. But all said, other countries now should take note. And I remember sending a message a week ago. You see, there's no free lunch anywhere. There's no free lunch anywhere. So many of these countries who think that, this begging world, that thinks really America will be there to help us here and so on. No, forget about that. That has come to an end. There would be nobody for you. A country like Africa now, we should be talking about our own capacities and say, look here, what is this we can? This nonsense must stop of imagining you call them development partners. Forget about it. Now to them, they are on their own. They wake up and just close the taps, and you are in total disarray. So a country like Africa should be opening the books and taking its lessons.
Yeah.
What next? We are now on our own. We need to know how to survive. And if
Angela.
we can't do that, we're in
Mm.
trouble.
Is anyone considering that?
It's difficult to say. I saw that President Trump, I think he tweeted in the last 24 hours about South African farmers being badly treated again. So if you are a white South African farmer, you and your family on a fast track to citizenship in the United States. No, I agree with Abdu entirely. The more concerning things is not just the disruption, but the risk of a hot war. I listen to a lot of commentary, but I'm increasingly convinced that people really don't know. They can't really predict accurately. If you look at the foreign policy establishment, I read Foreign Policy magazine, I read Foreign Policy, the publication, the Atlantic Council. There's just a lot of stuff there, but no one is really pointing out. So like this morning, Oscar, the BBC was reporting that the U.S. administration has begun to reduce the privileges of its allies, privileged access to information, intelligence. There's something called the Five Eyes.
Yes. Yes.
So now they turned off the tap for satellite imagery for Ukraine, which it's important for Ukraine to identify
Know where the next attack
Russian
is coming from.
formations. Also in the last 24 hours, there was a barrage of attacks, ballistic missiles attacks, I think on Ukraine, for which they obviously didn't have better defenses now. So it almost appears as if it's no longer Russia's war on Ukraine, but the U.S. war on Ukraine, which is very, very different from where we were, just a couple of weeks ago. So it's a complicated world. At the beginning of last year, because of geopolitical tensions on the rise, I remember me and my colleagues had a working title: "The world is at war, and therefore Africa is at war." And I gave several talks about this, Abdu, about where does Africa position itself. Isolation in the US, chaos in Europe. Our experience has been that whenever there is this amount of agitation, animus in the northern hemisphere, Africa is often targeted for exploitation, and the exploitation could come in the form of people just ignoring you. And so here, there are individuals who consider that there's no restraint anymore, and they go full hog, and then resources are squandered. On the investment scale, Abdu, if you look at the type of attention Africa is getting, it is from privateers, mercenaries.
Yes.
So it's like we have gone back to the 1960s.
Just look at the flow in Congo.
But
you look at the figures,
Martin,
you can't believe it.
that's why I support Ugandan troops
And the
being
whole
there. I think we should at least stake our claim, and interest there.
Instead of a mercenary,
It's
Yeah,
good
Uganda
yeah,
should
to
also
say
have a
that,
claim.
not Martin.
Yeah.
Martin, please don't say it.
Martin,
Because they might
is
say
anyone
that's you.
talking about these things in the NRM party? Because if it continues like this, you are the first one who's going to be unemployed, because the Minister of Tourism, without tourists, there will be a problem.
The tourists. The tourists.
No, we are not talking about Kawempe. We are talking about geopolitics. President Trump and the effect on Uganda, and for him, Martin's docket is tourism.
Yeah, the tourists, I think, are not affected by this. Actually, the Americans are still our biggest number of visitors in Uganda, and we expect them to continue coming. But I think, like Abudu and Angela have said about Trump, I have seen, because Trump has been a reality TV star for some time.
Reality show, yes.
And I want to assure you that this is going to be his biggest episode. This is 4-5 years, with probably America as
He's on a reality show.
trust me, and it will be spoken about probably for the next 150 years, because he has so far signed, I think, around 44 executive orders, the most disruptive that have been signed before. But I know one thing for a fact:
Martin, even before you go, writers and publishing houses, they are laughing all the way to the bank now.
Yes.
Just these 50 days,
Yes.
there is a lot of material to make millions of dollars on.
Yes. And he's deliberately, I mean, every engagement is before the media. So he's giving free. But the interesting bit is how the politicians in Washington, around Capitol Hill, feel. Because you have a bunch of businessmen who have, especially like Elon Musk, because a politician is somehow balanced how people feel. You have someone who's probably going to make 10,000 people lose federal jobs and maintain only 300, and he doesn't care about anything vis-a-vis the politicians. So they feel, I mean, suffocated out of the Washington space. And trust me, there is going to be a fight back. These are only 60 days. Trump is going to have a fight until probably he ends his term. But it's interesting for us as Africa, and I said this before, we saw this coming. This guy has withdrawn out of the World Health Organization. He's for I think medical aid, he's clear. After the 90 days, it's not coming back. I think that is clear. He has saved us from the $42 million that was coming to Uganda for behavior change. I think
I want to know, who are the recipients of this money?
No, it should be, of course, the other side, through the American embassy.
We just have a few minutes left.
Through the American. So you ask the people, the Chagulanyis and group, I don't know, behavioral change towards the gay, whatever it is really. So he has saved us, and we are very happy with Trump. The team manages problems in the US, and leave us alone. We'll manage ours, and we are prepared.
Derek Wanda.
Everything is interesting and seems to be interesting. How Donald Trump is changing America's interests that have lived donkey years, and turning around the grid within just 60 days, like others have said. Seems like Donald Trump is now looking out for superpower Russia for whichever interests he has, really. To look at a war between Russia and Ukraine, where everyone had drawn lines that Ukraine in this is the victim, and Russia is the oppressor, and now seems to be pushing away from that line and towing the line of Russia. And little wonder, there has been a lot of division already within the U.S. The U.S. government, but I know that the European world has come together, and they have realized how Donald Trump is changing everything that's happening. But like the Honorable Mugara says, most of these things were expected. If you listened to most of Donald Trump's speeches during his campaigns, what he said and proclaimed in campaigns is exactly what he's doing. So probably we shall see many of these in the coming days, and there's certainly going to be a fight back from the people who feel they deserve more respect. It was even, in my view, it was very ironical that Donald Trump was telling Zelensky off how he's being disrespectful and not being mindful of and yet probably the opposite was actually very true. So we are going to see more of that.
Mr. Sempala, Robert Sempala, final. Are you one of the people, when Martin was saying the 42 million, he was looking at you. Were you the beneficiary?
Of course he is.
Of course he is.
Actually, Martin forgets that it is the whole of Uganda, because you said money was going to so many development projects around the country here, including ourselves, basically, because you said supports a lot of humanitarian work, and we are direct victims, for instance.
The money was for behavior change.
Behavior change.
But the fault was
Honorable
was
Katuntu
yes.
wants you to know who that beneficiary is. We do not know actually as a result
So
of.
which behaviors did you change?
It's you to explain the behavior issues, not us. But us here, our
You also want to know who is alleging.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Our docket is
No,
about press
the
freedom,
photo was
is about
Trump
contributing to
himself.
democracy, and that is what we basically do. So, if anything to lose, we're losing as a collective. But for me, President Trump is always on the X, communicating that way. Honorable Katuntu says his cabinet may not even know a lot about what he's about to do, brief them later. So you should be wary of
For
such
at all.
of such leaders who do a lot of X-space communications. They do not even first engage with the race, and they are slowing it up there for you to start discussion. So me, I'm extremely very worried for the next few years that are coming, both as a country, but more so as Africa. We saw it in the first term in office, and now it's a continuation of exactly what was happening then.
Okay, another mention of WRC 25. It's not just a road trip. There will be activities on Lake Naivasha, hiking and Menengai Crater, Nairobi's nightlife. Book with Kenya Airways and get a 12% discount.
This sounds like a fun trip.
It does. That's what they say. So, yeah, it should be a fun trip.
Motor racing is always fun.
Star Cafe, thank you so much, Mr. Semple. I didn't tell you that you are welcome to the Star Cafe goodies. Abdu is eating nothing for 1 month. So here we don't bring chapati in the pocket. So
I'm
it's
fasting
okay.
on behalf of my colleagues, so I'll carry mine. I
You-
hope
you-
Abdul carries away his.
So thank you, Star Cafe. Abdu, we did wish you last week a happy Ramadan.
Oh, thank you.
Ramadan
My
Mubarak. The Christians have also started their fasting from Ash
And,
Wednesday. You have a book. Have I finished all the announcements? Go on, Abdu. Speak to it.
Oh, well, I done already, but this by Michael Wilsmans, it is Risking It All, and it's a book about Elon Musk. There is a little bit of a comment which I... no, I don't want to preempt you.
an immigrant as well.
Yeah, you need to read the history. You need to, this is another one. I haven't read this one.
He's
but
an
I've
expert
read the
from
other.
Africa.
First of all, his grandfather came from Canada.
Mm.
Yeah, and he was a very wealthy gentleman and so on. So he's not an immigrant from Netherlands. Now, sometimes many of you people think once he's a white, you think he's a Bua one.
He is who even overstayed his visa.
But is a Canadian by origin, and so it's quite interesting.
Thank you so much.
I wish you to have a good reading.
Thank you very much for the book, Honorable Katuntu, and for Gang. Thank you,
Oscar.
Derek Wandera.
Oscar, just as we summarize, I just wanted to take this honor to wish you a happy birthday. Happy belated, because it was yesterday.
Yes.
Happy
Thank
birthday
you, thank
to
you, thank you.
Oscar.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies today. Thank you, Mr. Sempala, for coming to Gang. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you, Honorable Martin Mogara. There are many, many messages for you on Twitter. X, you'll find them there.
Yes, scared of the soldiers.
I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and I shall see you next week.